I'd love to get back to talking to blue collar people you mentioned. Those are some of my favorite people. So it was actually really cool to find out that for many years of your life, basically the way you made a living is talking to blue collar people and getting their story. So I'm traveling across the world for a bit, but of course the world that I love the most and I'm most curious about is the different subcultures and towns of the United States. So I took a road trip across the U.S. in my early 20s for several months. And that was like a transformative experience for me. And that's something, one of the luxuries I have is to have the freedom to do whatever the hell I want now. And so I want to take a road trip across the United States for several months. And one of the things I wanted to do is to just to talk to people in small towns in middle America. I don't know what words to put on it, but to talk to the very people that you talked about, that construction workers, plumbers, waitresses, oil rig workers, just people that do something real, people that are real, that don't make much money, that struggle, but have as you talked about, have like a richness to them that's not often revealed, that's not often talked about. So maybe can you speak to that, to your time with blue collar folk?
When I got all those messages we were talking about earlier in this, like so many of them, and even now, it's even like in the last couple of days, I've gotten some where they start with, "Hey, I'm a nobody," but like that's how a lot of those start, like the nobodies of the world, if you want to call them. Like it's frustrating that the people who literally have built and preserve and maintain the structure of society that we all comfortably live in, those people have the least amount of representation. They're ignored just because of the way the social hierarchy exists. But some of the most dim-witted, irrelevant, terrible people are put here and are idolized and spotlighted, and they're all over television and they're all over the internet, and we act like they're kings and queens and like that they're royalty. And then all these people who do jobs that most of us will be too either wouldn't have even the ability to do. We'd be like how many people are going to go underwater and weld? But if we didn't have underwater welders, like one of my best friends, whose name is also Jocko, funny enough, the dude works 70, 80 hours every week. He's on the Chesapeake Bay tunnel job now, but the dude's gotten on heights that I couldn't get on. He's went underground places I wouldn't go, and nobody will ever know. Like nobody even knows those people's stories or what they went through or like the kind of lives they lived. And they're like the people who create the fabric of society, and even the waitresses and the waiters and like all these factory jobs that I worked in, all those people, like you talk about the craziest place I ever worked and the craziest people I ever met was this little place called Perfect Air in Marion, North Carolina. And it was this commercial air conditioning factory, which is, I think, closed now, but they didn't pay very well. And so everyone they hired was either people that had criminal backgrounds who couldn't get jobs elsewhere, or idiots who dropped out of high school and couldn't work elsewhere like me. And so I was 18 years old working in this place with people who were mostly in their 50s and 60s. But you want to talk about being exposed to just a whole nother world of people, like, and just the stories and those people are far more interesting than many of the people that we consider to be celebrities. Like most people who are celebrities are just pretty boring and airheaded and don't really even know what real life is about. They're pretty unrelatable to the rest of the world. And so it would be really cool. I mean, that's the whole reason that I want to go out and do these shows in places that haven't had music in them in 10 years, because those people, like, that is America to me. You know, how many people in Pittsburgh have been an hour outside of Pittsburgh? And even in Virginia, if you lived in Northern Virginia and you drive 2.5 hours southwest, you're in a whole nother planet. Like the people, the accents, the culture. And so I feel driven in the same way. Like I would love to find a way to try to bridge that cultural gap, to make those people relevant, and because they are like some of the most, and it's funny because we emulate a lot of those people. Like, you know, modern country music is a bunch of people emulating those people.
Right.
you know?
And there's also like I love people that have a skill and become masters of that skill also. So that element is also there. Even if it's like insanely difficult work like being a miner, like there's skill to that. There's stories there. There's
Yeah.
like what it takes to do that. So what I mean, some of my favorite humans are engineers, and all they do is solve really hard problems, and they develop. I mean, it's a pain in the ass job.
Yeah.
Anything in the factory is extremely difficult, but you learn so much about what it takes to solve intricate, like nuanced problems in the physical world. So coal mining, oil rigs, like you mentioned, welding. That's a fascinating line of work.
And those are trades that are in many cases dying because because they aren't popular in culture anymore. For everything from agricultural to plumbing and electrical, it's like those are all areas I think if you were to go out and talk to some of those people and shed light on it, it would you could change the entire landscape in America of how it's perceived and make it cool, you know?
Yeah, so thank you what you're doing on that front. I want to say I wrote it down. Please, if you know people that will be willing to talk, reach out to me. A good way to do that is lexfriedman.com/contact.
This was another one of the things early on that I had an idea about and I thought was getting done and it wasn't that I've got to go back and try to figure out is doing prison shows and doing rehab shows and all that. But I am really intrigued with like going into those places and trying to immerse myself in just the mental state that those people are in and like it's not talked about a whole lot, but
Also, people who get out, ex-convicts. I mean, that's a hard life. That's just a hard life to try to reintegrate back into society.
yeah. And a lot of those people at Perfect Air that I worked with, they almost all were in some form of legal trouble. Like there was a lady that worked on the assembly line beside me named Denise, and her and her husband had been manufacturing methamphetamine, and he took the fall for most of it. She only had to go on probation. He was still in prison. But man, like Denise was a very sweet lady, and like aside from the meth manufacturing, like she was like great, you
Yeah,
know, like
yeah.
and just such a character, like in such a good way. And so it's like, yeah, just
Denise, lexfreeman.com/contact. Let's talk. I mean, yeah, like both sort of the plumbers and the coal miners, and Denise with the old meth habits. I mean, they're walking the line of like, surviving is hard.
yeah,
So you have to do a real hard job, and then you also have to live life, which is in general hard. Divorce, kids, people die, you lose like the medical issues, and that can destroy you completely. All of a sudden something happens, you can't afford it. The insurance system destroys people, all of that. So you have to somehow navigate life while working your ass off in a real hard job. And those people, they have stories. That's a real pain. And from that pain, from that anger, that's where Richmond, north of Richmond, that you could just feel their pain come through with that song and with your other work. So that, like, there is a landscape of suffering.
yeah. It doesn't have to be that. We don't all have to be that decentralized either. Like if there is that much commonality among people, which I do believe there is, like just innately in suffering and then yeah, like there's a guy in West Virginia that I talked to that he's got a piece of property beside of mine that he was interested in selling, but the reason he's got this dream of opening a like putting some cabins there and renting them out for people to come Airbnb. He works at Lowe's full time, but his son's like 19 and has got this heart surgery he's got to have. And so he's trying to sell the place for that. And just that guy and all you'd ever see him as is the guy that works at Lowe's, like pulling lumber or whatever. But he's got this very insanely complex life he's trying to manage. He doesn't want to lose his son. Like he's just going to sell everything. And like at one point in time, maybe the church served that role of like when people really fell off track and they didn't have a support system and they were like on this tiny boat out in the ocean, they figured out some kind of way to rally. In my mind, that's like the dream of all this. If I die and there's any like legacy left or anything done, it's like finding a way to take all the people that fill that role and organizing them and empowering them and protecting them it's rebuilding the community, but in a real way, not in like this fairy tale bullshit. Everybody's going to love each other and we're all just going to be one big happy family. Like everybody's still going to get mad and hate each other in certain ways. And that's good. Like we need those tornadoes. Like you said, we need people pissed off and angry, and we need people to feel like they can be angry and open about things that are wrong. Like people should be able to speak their mind, and we shouldn't all just kiss each other's ass, and we shouldn't all just pretend to be overly polite and say, "Hey, Debbie, you have a good weekend." Like you said, like we need all this controversy and this turmoil, and like we need the hell of what that side that the internet brings out in people, but it just needs to be in real life, and it needs to be in a way where we're all like, we all are at least chasing the same common goal, which is probably that we don't want to starve and we want to have decent health, and we want to be able to like provide a decent life for our kids, or at least we just don't, we just want to live a decent life. Like, I think somehow that fixes what you describe, like the people who fall in despair and are isolated. And it's a terrifying world to live in. It's that principle. Again, I need a phone a friend thing where we can just keep calling Jordan for all these things. But like he explains, there's this principle in the Bible about those who, about it, the more you have, the more you'll receive, and the less you have, the less you'll receive, kind of a thing. And it's just a universal law in society where it seems like the lower you get to the bottom, it's almost like the more like the less resources you have available, and the less friends you have, and it's like you just the further you go snowballs into where it's like people just hit rock bottom, and then what? It's like when you get out of prison, what are you supposed to do? Or when you're a veteran with mental health, like what are you supposed to do? Like in my mind, that's what the church is supposed to be there for, is like, but obviously it doesn't fill that role anymore.
To some people, at least religion does a little bit. It gives, it's at least a foundation of community, a foundation of hope for people and when they're really struggling.
Yeah.